Hello once again, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music, and for once I'm standing up because I thought, why not? Now, as ever, if you like these kind of videos that I make, and more recently they've been more about music than anything else, but I will be doing more electronics again soon. Anyway, if you like these kind of videos, please think about subscribing to the channel, it really does help, and if you hit the little bell icon, then you'll be notified of the next video that comes out. Now, I'm talking today a follow-on from yesterday's video really, and it's about the documentary that's just hit the BBC iPlayer called The Making of Do They Know It's Christmas. Now, when I read the publicity about it, I wasn't too sure what sort of format this documentary would make, whether it would be one with lots of talking heads or whether it would just be the footage from the day. And it turns out to be the latter. And it turns out it's not quite a new documentary, because what it is, in 1984 when the event happened, Jill Sinclair, the wife of Trevor Horn and founder of Sarm Studios, put together a documentary that got shown on the Tube, which is why it was presented by Paulie Yates, or rather Paulie Yates did all the interviews. There was no actual presenter as such. And it was kind of a fly-on-the-wall candid film about the making of Band-Aid. Now, it was only shown once, I think, on the Tube, and then it was released as a home video, but only in America. So I don't think it was shown on TV in America, but they released it on VHS.
What's wrong with that guitar?
It's fine that it's not a Japanese copy. If it's a Japanese copy, it'd be in tune.
And it never got shown again, I don't think, until the early 2000s, when it got shown on MTV a couple of times. And that's when I actually first saw the documentary. I didn't see it when it was on the Tube at the time. I don't know why. I must have just missed that episode when it was on telly. But they had access to everywhere, as you would imagine, to do the documentary. And various outtakes have appeared in other documentaries over the years, but just, you know, clips here and there. And when I watched the documentary, the first thing I felt like it was like watching a documentary made in the style of Peter Jackson's Get Back. There was no voiceovers, there was no talking over any of that. It was just the dialogue of what happens. Now, when back then you made a documentary, you generally would film something and edit it, and it was all shot on film, it was all shot on 60mm film, and then they would have transferred that to videotape, probably 1-inch videotape, and then it would be edited from that. So you'd have one machine as like your play-in machine, and you'd have another machine that's your master, and you pick the bits you want and you join them together and your film is made. Now, this film, I think what has happened is they've taken the original film that they produced for the Tube and they've just added to it. And they've added to it by using the material from the original transfer in 1984. And so what I'm saying is basically this film is not in full HD, it's SD, but it's presented as 4:3 pictures in a 16:9 raster, and that is HD. So there's no loss of picture quality from the original. And how I know this, there's two reasons. The first reason is that the caption names on the screen, some of the original captions are on the film. For example, when Simon Le Bon walks in and it says Duran Duran, and some of the other people that appear. And the captions at the end, the sort of credit sequence, is the same credit sequence. And I was a little surprised about this, because I'd have thought they may have updated things or changed things as they do, but no, it had the original end credits that were in like a swirly font, not quite sort of Comic Sans, but you know, it's in one of those sort of swirly type fonts. And so that's where it came from, and I only kind of worked this out as I was getting into watching the film. But as a film itself, it's really enjoyable. It's much better that it's extended. It's gone from being 25 minutes to being an hour and 15 minutes. There's loads of great behind the scenes banter and stuff that's going on. It starts with the previous day where they're in Midge's studio, and they're working on the backing track or playing the backing track back. Interestingly, Paul Weller is there. And now, a lot of people talk about Paul Weller as being really grumpy on the day. And because he was there the day before, I can't help but wonder, did Paul Weller think he would have a bigger part to play in the song than he actually did? I.e., he would get to do a lead vocal line, which of course he didn't. He just sang in the chorus. And I think he did some of the little backing bits where there were like, 2 or 3 people singing at one time. And maybe that's true or not, I don't know. That's just a theory I've concocted out of my head. But they're in Weller's studio, in Midgear's studio, and they're playing the backing track, and there's a nice little interview with Bob and Midge at the start. And then we get into the day, so you've got the various people arriving, all the different arrivals. Now, when they made the record, the first thing they recorded was the chorus doing the Feed the World, Do They Know It's Christmas bit. And then they did the individual parts afterwards. And then I think right at the end was when they added Phil Collins' drums. I think that was the order. But the way they've presented the documentary is more in the way of how the song goes, with the individual artists first, then the chorus parts, and I think Phil Collins kind of in between. Now, the original edit did have more of the chorus stuff first than the other bits. And on this one, they've got the chorus bit where they're doing like a vocal loop, which was for the 12-inch mix that Trevor Horn was producing. But they had very limited time to do this, so I think they did that in a very short section. And then after that, they, as I say, they show the individual bits, and then they kind of, at the end of the whole thing, there's a little interview with Bob and Midge on themselves, which I think was done before mixing, just saying how the day went and the fact they're going to be, spending all night doing the mix. And then right at the end, you get the video of the song. Now, there's a couple of changes they've made. They've taken 2 bits out. Now, I rewatched the original film. Somebody's uploaded it to YouTube off the American VHS. And that in itself, I think, is a slightly different edit to the one that went out on the Tube. But the Tube version is on the Live Aid website, the Live Aid YouTube channel. But that's had an edit too from when it first went out. And there's 2 main edits they've taken out. The first edit is when Boy George is doing his vocal line. He's listening on his headphones and he's asking who the various singers were before him that came in. And he asks if it was Alf, I'm presuming referring to Alison Moyet, but of course Alison Moyet wasn't on the record. And they said, no, that's George Michael. And then Boy George says, well, it sounds very camp. And then he looks to the camera and says, because he is camp, or but he is camp, one of the two. And that's been taken out. And the other bit that's been taken out is some larking about downstairs in the sort of the coffee area where the loos and things are. And you see Phil Collins come out of the loo, and then you've got Status Quo, as in Francis Rossi and Rick Parfitt, with Nigel Planer as Neil, and Parfitt's there strumming a guitar doing Rocking All Over the World or something. And you see Francis Rossi put something in Parfitt's mouth, but that's been taken out of the Live Aid version of the edit, of the original short film, and it's not in this new film either. Which, I can see why they've taken both out, but overall, it's a great watch. It's really nice to see as much of the footage. There probably isn't much more footage left to see. I think they probably used everything. And I think this is how I think documentaries should be made. If they've got all that, people like to see all the interaction between people, because this was an event where the biggest names in British pop music all came together, and probably for the first time. I mean, I think Duran and Spandau did know each other because they were, healthy rivals from the start. But I'm sure Heaven 17 probably never met any of the other people. The Shalimar people probably hadn't met any of the others. There's nice bits where, Bob Geldof's introducing, you know, said, here's Bono, this is Paul Weller, you know, to whoever it was that was coming in. And, you know, this would have been the first time these people had met, and they ended up singing on like the biggest charity record, well, one of the biggest records ever made. And, you know, I think it's a great thing. And I think those people that appeared on it, they all took away something with them. And I think they probably all became better people for it, because they were all at that one level. And you know, they do say when they talk about these things, you know, leave the egos at the door. And I think they did, because at the end of the day, nobody had anything to prove over anybody else, because they were all at that big level. They were all arena selling artists. They'd all had #1s, or if not #1 singles, certainly #1 albums. They'd all toured the UK. They've all been on Top of the Pops. And as such, they were on that equal level. And it was just a special day. And I think this new edit of the documentary really shows that. And all I can say is it's an absolutely excellent watch. And I think you'll probably want to watch it at least twice, because there's bits you'll see, and then when you watch it again, there's other bits that you might have missed first time because you were watching it. And it's just really good just to watch people in the background and to see how people are talking to each other and just how they interact. So yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 from me. It's a brilliant documentary. It's on the BBC iPlayer now, and I think it's going to be on there for a year. And no doubt somebody will probably put it on YouTube as well. If not, the Band-Aid Trust will put it on their own Live Aid YouTube channel. Anyway, that's my review. Hope you found it interesting. And please comment below if you agree, disagree, or have your own thoughts. And I'll catch you on the next one.